Ocean Pines is a vibrant residential community nestled on Maryland's eastern shore. With over 9 miles of waterfront property, amenities like an 18-hole championship golf course and a public yacht club, and a rich history dating back to 1968. Of course, if you live here, you probably know most of that. And if you don't, it's almost all apparent from your first visit. Each week on the Pines Cast, we work to bring out the ocean pines that might be less apparent. We celebrate the region, the amenities, and, most of all, the people who make and keep Ocean Pines a special place to live. Welcome to the Pines Cast, your source of news and insights about Ocean Pines and the official podcast of the Ocean Pines Association. Welcome to a special bonus episode of the Pines Cast focusing on the upcoming election. We will be speaking with Election Committee Chair Steve Ransdell about the process for making sure that your votes count and making sure that your votes are counted, and the different things that the committee is doing to try to make sure this is a great, free, and fair election. We have a great conversation. We dip into a little bit of the history of Ocean Pines, and of course we start with how to get him here. So, as a matter of fact, let's talk to Steve Ransdell now. So, we are going to be talking about the election, or mostly about the process of the election. But before we get to that, let's get to you. What brought you to Ocean Pines, and how have you found it so far?
Well, it's a fairly long story, but I'll try and give you the synopsis. Essentially, I married into Ocean Pines. My wife and her late husband purchased property there about 20 years ago, if not, no, actually, it's more like 30 years ago. And when Brenda and I met, she had the property. I came on as a partner in that marriage, and we were renting to longtime renters for a number of years, and for about the last 10 years, we've taken the possession of the property back and done some major renovations and are now enjoying it ourselves. Still as part-timers, but rapidly approaching retirement and full-time status.
That is super cool. And how did you decide that you eventually wanted to retire to Ocean Pines? Like, was that always her plan? What has appealed to you about Ocean Pines since kind of coming into the community?
Oh my goodness, that's going to take some time. But again, I'll try and shorten my answer. Uh, since I've been coming to Ocean Pines with my wife, I've discovered most of what Ocean Pines has to offer, and it's all fantastic. It's a great place to live, uh, great people, great amenities. It's kind of everything I want. And in our case, fortunately, the property is paid for. It's the perfect place to retire to. No mortgage, recently renovated, and everything that Ocean Pines has to offer. The most exciting thing for me is uh, once I do transition to full time, I will be able to take full advantage of the various the racket sports leagues and maybe a little bocce ball that's new. There's just so many opportunities to stay active and involved and enjoy the community.
That's great. So I wanted to ask you, what were the amenities that most appealed to you? How did you end up getting involved with the election committee? When did that happen, and what was the route there?
Uh, the route there was that I have previously been on the aquatics committee. I've always been one to want to be active and involved in the community. So when openings came up on the elections committee, and knowing how important the elections are to the community, I wanted to get involved. So I volunteered and was accepted. And at the time, the immediate past election chairman was transitioning out of Ocean Pines. So at one point, just before he transitioned out, we had only 2 members. So it was kind of step up or let some massive recruiting effort go forward. I was more than happy to step up and follow in Tom Piatti's footsteps and try. He did a great job while he was the election chairman, and I hope to come close to living up to that.
So, committee to committee, and when you got onto the election committee, so this is your second year as chair or your second year on the committee altogether?
No, I had about a half year the year before.
And
So
so what were the challenges of like learning to be on the committee? Was it harder than you thought? Was it easier than you thought? What was it like getting on and kind of, as they say today, I don't like the word, but it's the one people use, onboarding. What was the onboarding process like?
the onboarding process was pretty much talking to Tom, getting a debrief. Tom shared access to past committee documents that we to all of our records so that I could see how things had been. And the first year, it was kind of learning under Tom's wing and developing, learning what he did, and then trying to implement that when he stepped away. So the first year was that I was chairman was largely executing Tom's plan, uh, and it is still the backbone of our plan today. But fast forward to today in this election, we have five very active and involved committee members who support the effort. Divergence of opinions, which is always good for making sure different ideas are represented. Um, and so that's how we got here. We have, at the rest of the committee's recommendation, made some changes to the plan, and we just all hope to run a free and fair and open election.
And can you talk to me for just a second about the plan and what that involves?
Well, the whole elections process is rather involved. It perhaps a good starting point is we put out a request for proposals to various election vendors and received responses back. Eventually, settling on an election vendor to actually facilitate the election. We do offer both paper and electronic balloting as available options. And so the vendor takes care of the printing and mailing of the paper and provides the online facilitation of the electronic vote. And then they count the votes and give us the results, which the committee does step in and adjudicate any ballots that might be unclear or questionable, meaning that the machine can't accurately determine their intent. So we adjudicate those, and that's once we certify the results, they're announced to the community, and then they are certified at the annual meeting coming up on August 9th.
And the elections are annual, right? Because you have it
Yes.
split.
Yes, and this year it's not just the board of directors election. We also will have a referendum on the ballot for the Southside Firehouse. That's one of the big improvements, I think, anyway. That the referendum now is supported by our election vendor as well, and it can be put on one ballot, and that saves Ocean Pines considerable amount of money of having to mail separate materials for a referendum.
Oh, that is so cool. And so talk to me about that. Is this the first time you guys were able to do this with the referendum?
Uh, yes, but it's not really due to any fault of an election vendor or an unwillingness. It was really that we just haven't had a referendum that's come up since then. So once electronic voting was approved by the board and made available to the community, there seems to be considerable amount of support for that because it is very quick and easy. Um, but with this one, we wanted to add in the possibility of a referendum so that we already had an arrangement, contract, pricing, and all for doing that. So we are situated to do a separate referendum if one comes up at a time that's not near an election. But fortunately, this year we could save ourselves
Yeah,
some money.
that genuinely is pretty cool. So, when the election season kind of has already started, can you take me through some of the next couple steps? So, probably by the time this comes out, the slate Well, not the slate, but the candidates have probably been finalized. So if everything is finalized, what is the next step?
Okay. The very next step is that we do hold a candidate forum. Uh, uh, it'll be the 4 candidates we have, unless a fifth name comes up, and then we will hurriedly scurry to get them involved if they so choose. The forum will be held Friday, June 27th at 5 p.m. at the Golf Clubhouse. I want to emphasize it's 5 p.m. Some of our earlier information went out with a different time, but we had not yet heard from the Golf Clubhouse, and to accommodate their operating schedule, the forum's at 5 p.m. June 27th.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just let's
Go ahead.
let's talk about that. So, can people submit questions in advance? I know that these can be enthusiastic events.
Yes. Yes, people can submit. The format of the forum is that we allow each of the candidates to make an opening statement. Then we have a round of questions. Those questions are developed by the elections committee, and each candidate will answer one of those, selected at random from the list that we've created. But the second round is community questions. And in order to manage the time, we ask that anybody who has a question that they want to ask of the candidates to submit it to the elections committee. We put it on a numbered list, and candidates will draw a number by random and be served up that question that's provided by the community. And then we do have a third round where we allow each candidate to ask one other candidate a directed question.
Oh, well, that is fantastic. That is different from the old format, the format that I was used to.
It is, but it allows the candidates to focus on what differentiates them. Uh, we do our best in moderating the questions. We certainly don't want angry or personal attacks of any kind. Not that anyone has ever tried to do that. We just we want to remind the candidates, the community, everybody out there that we're all neighbors. We're just picking people to serve in these roles. Um, it's not life or death. It's important, but it's not life or death.
Oh, that is very, very interesting. I covered them back in the back at the turn of the century, and there was just a line of people asking essentially the same question for 4 hours, and
No,
sometimes it could be longer.
We do
Yeah,
we do reserve the right to pre-screen the questions,
fantastic.
and anything that's accusatory, let's call it, or challenging someone for decisions they made is perfectly acceptable and even encouraged. But you know, sometimes things can get, as you said, overly exciting, and we want to keep a damper on. And again, remind folks we're all neighbors here.
Hey there, listeners. Are you in the Ocean Pines area and looking for a pharmacy that goes above and beyond? Look no further than Title Health Home Scripts. Open 6 days a week, our knowledgeable pharmacists are ready to fill your prescriptions in just minutes. Plus, we offer free home delivery in the Ocean Pines area and have a super convenient drive-through window. Need over-the-counter items? We've got a large selection. And with our monthly sales, you'll find everything you need at great prices. Conveniently located at the North Gate of Ocean Pines, Title Health Home Scripts is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. To fill a prescription or arrange for a free home delivery, give us a call at 410-543-4769. That's 410-543-4769. Remember, that's Title Health Home Scripts, your trusted pharmacy partner. Okay, so we have the forum in the bag. Once the forum's in the bag, what is the next step?
All right. The after the forum and after the 20th deadline for any new candidates passes, we have the voter eligibility deadline is July 5th. And that determines who among us can actually vote. Every homeowner is allowed one vote for every lot that they own. And Eligibility is provided that all of your assessment dues are paid and you have no CPI violations pending. So the eligibility deadline says, okay, these folks are paid up and no violations. They're good voters. And we send that off to the vendor, and that's the list they use to mail the ballots.
Oh.
There's also a list of people who are not eligible who get a letter that says, hey, you're not eligible to vote at this time, but you have a period of time to pay your dues and or fix the CPI violations. And if you do that, then we do a second mailing to get those folks access to the ballot.
Oh, that is awesome because that's another thing that's been in the past a matter of contention. The whole my check is in the mail, why can't I vote kind of complaints are obvious, or the opposite of where people were worried that maybe someone on the board wasn't all paid up and wasn't able to run. And it sounds like this is really, I don't want to say pleasant, but I think a not unpleasant experience there.
I think it's very easy. It can be contentious at times, depending on
Right.
what the board has done or has not done that people want, and that's why we hold elections, so everyone gets a chance to make their voice heard. I would emphasize that, folks, if I'm not even sure we still have it, but if you pay your dues in installments, in order to be eligible to vote, they have to be paid up, paid in full. So if you get that letter and that's your situation, um, I'd encourage you to contact the OP administration and see what you can work out with them. We can only mail to the list that the admin folks tell us is eligible.
Okay, so because, for instance, let's say my next payment is due, I don't know, July 8th. And so I'm technically behind, but not really. Can that kind of thing really happen?
Well, I wouldn't say you're behind, but
right.
you're not paid in full.
Yeah. That's interesting because that's an important point for people to know, because I can imagine getting a letter and being surprised and saying, hey, no, wait, I'm right on schedule. But right on schedule and all paid up are two different things, depending upon what your schedule is.
Yes, sir.
And so once everyone is certified and the letters come in the mail, then the voting begins. And what do you do during those periods? You're just like
okay, well,
waiting? Go ahead.
By that point, we have sent to our vendor what we call the ballot materials, and that includes candidate bios, the candidates' written responses to 3 questions that we gave them very early on, and it'll include the ballot, it'll include the referendum materials, and that will all. It's going to be mailed July 8th. And on that same day, it will be emailed. So it's important for people to remember that delivery through the U.S. Postal Service is a little bit slower than electrons flying through the air.
Right.
So you will most likely get the electronic version of the materials first, followed typically, based on last year, within a day or two, followed up by the paper materials. But either one's acceptable in terms of voting. So those. And there will be a second mailing of the folks who become eligible.
Right.
So they will still get it. But I do want to point out to folks, this is extremely important, is that we can only mail to the mailbox that you have on file with OP admin. Okay. And we can only send electronic ballots to the email on file with OP admin. That's our official mailing list and email list. So we have run into last year several times when folks are part-timers here and their address on file is Ocean Pines, but they're actually in Pennsylvania or somewhere else. So we have no way of knowing that. So I encourage folks, if you know you're not going to be at the same address you have on file, you can always change it temporarily and change it back. But each individual homeowner has to be responsible to manage their mailing address so that we make every effort to get ballots to voters, but we don't know what we don't know.
Right. And I would expect the opposite probably happens occasionally since this happens in the summer. If people have packed away and they've already come down from the summer and they're not picking up their mail again until August, that can,
Correct.
right.
Correct.
But I guess the central email is what's critical to this.
It is absolutely. We've discussed many different approaches to solving that problem, but it always comes back to uh, we can't increase the administrative burden on the folks who help us run Ocean Pines. So the address on file is where we send the ballots.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think that's too much to ask. I mean, if you're interested enough to vote, then, at least having your email address straight, I can understand. Like I would certainly be the person to come down to Ocean Pines and have my mail going back to my house, but my email is, I think by now e-failed isn't that like newfangled anymore, right?
Well, it's not, but we do have a considerable number of older folks who are not comfortable with technology, and that's why we have not really considered doing away with paper.
Right.
Um, so we provide both methods um, for folks, and all I can say is that the election committee, the Pines administration, we do our very best to get everybody who's eligible to vote to get them a ballot. Um, it, that is a good deal of the work during the actual voting season is people calling and sometimes very upset. I didn't get my ballot. Why not? Well, most often the answer is because you're not at the mailbox
Right.
we have on file. So, or at the email address. Oh, my email changed. It happens.
Yeah,
Okay.
it absolutely does. And it's just the worst thing. It's almost as bad as having to change a bank account,
Yeah.
going through changing all of your email addresses. But so what's the next step now?
Okay. Once the ballots are out, and in fact, once the second wave of ballots gets caught up, then folks either go online and vote or mark up their paper ballot. I would caution folks packaging the ballot can be challenging for some. We do. It goes inside one envelope, inside another envelope, and that is just to protect the secrecy of the ballot. Uh, we call that the blind envelope or the secret envelope, so that when you respond back, of course, the mail has your return address perhaps on it, but the inside envelope is completely blind. All that's on there um, is a barcode, and that just facilitates our election vendor making sure they're counting the ballot in the right election.
That's important.
So people see it's also important to remind people that that barcode is essential to the count. If you cut it off, that is considered adulterating the ballot, and that will invalidate the ballot. And we don't want to do that. Your concerns about uh, any of us knowing who you voted for personally, I can assure you they are not founded in anything factual. I only care who I vote for.
But that seems like a lot to do. It seems like a lot to go through, right?
It does, but I understand there are some folks who disagree with the board or their actions, and they they might dislike them, and like it's somewhat normal for us Americans to distrust our government in any form. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying in this case, uh, that barcode identifies the election.
Right. And that's the larger point. It's not an identification. There's no need to hide it because it doesn't say anything about you, right? It just essentially says the year, right?
No. If we wanted to be able to do that, we could do it by just eliminating the secret envelope and just,
right.
Then we have the number that we mail to, that it's associated with the address we mail to, but we don't do that. The ballots are separated from the mailing envelope, and then at that point they are blind. I can tell you who that ballot voted for, but I can't tell you who that ballot belonged to.
Right. And so once the voting is done, how long does it take? Well, how long does the count take? Do they just give you the count? What's the next step we need to talk about here?
Well, the next steps to talk about are the ballot deadline. Paper ballots need to be received at our vendor, and it's all in a prepaid envelope, so they have to be received by August 6th. Okay, that's a Wednesday. If you're dropping your ballot off at the police station, we have a drop box
Right.
at the police station in the lobby, so you don't even have to mail it. You can drop it off there, but that drop box closes at noon on Wednesday. In past elections, it was maintained up until close of business, but the count window is only 3 days. So we have to get that drop box and collect the ballots and ship them to the vendor to be counted. So this year, the drop box will close a tiny bit early at noon, and that's just so that we can make sure that the package gets into the hands of UPS or FedEx and gets to MK Elections, our vendor, in time to be counted. So then after that, the actual count is scheduled for Friday, August 8th. And we will Ocean Pines will put out a Teams link so that anyone who wants to observe the count can do so. It's simply a camera pointed at the conference room crew who are uh, opening all the ballots and stacking them and running them through an electronic counter. But again, we want to be as transparent as possible. People have said that they want to be able to see what's going on, and we do try to our very best to provide that. Once the ballots are counted there that day, we will have a count. We plan to close the public viewing so that the election committee can receive. I skipped a step, excuse me. So after the votes are counted, there are some ballots that were not able to be read by the machine. So the elections committee and anybody can watch. We're going to do what we call adjudicating those ballots.
Right.
We're just going to look at it and say, okay, it seems pretty obvious to all of us that this ballot intended to cast a vote for these people. And assuming the committee all agree or a majority of us agree, then that ballot will be tallied as we decide. But it's usually it's usually a pretty straightforward thing. It's most often obvious what the intent was of the ballot. But as I said, that's also where we would disqualify any ballots that have been adulterated or changed in any way, including cutting off the barcode. Um, and then once that, we will have a final tally. Um, the election committee will go offline to discuss the results and address whether or not there's any anomalies or anything that appears at question. Typically, there's not, and it's just a straightforward vote that we accept the results. And then we'll have another Teams call where people can watch as we announce the final results. The results, while the voting is over, they're not certified until the annual meeting, which is the following day,
Right.
the 9th. And they can't be certified if we don't get a quorum of homeowners there. So we need at least 100 homeowners to show up to the annual meeting and be counted as part of the voting block so that they can certify the elections. Otherwise, the board has to call a special meeting, and then the board, without all of us in attendance, will certify the election.
Oh, that's interesting. Does that happen? Has that happened before? Does it happen all the time? Do you know?
It happens all the time. We seldom
really?
get a quorum. We certainly sometimes struggle to get as many voters as are eligible to cast votes. It's a kind of the apathy thing, um, but it's a much smoother process if we get a quorum at the annual meeting. Like I said, 100 lots represented. And that's part of the election committee's job, is to check people in, validate that they are in fact a homeowner, and and if they own multiple lots, they get multiple votes.
And they count as multiple attendees, so you could have 60 people there and still have a quorum.
We can. Yes.
Excellent. And I guess, is that the end of your story, or what do you start preparing for the next election? What happens after that?
Well, as far as the community might be concerned, the election's over. The winners are announced, but we still have some reporting to do. We do an annual report to the board of directors on the election, and we point out any recommendations for going forward or any limitations we encountered, all towards making the next election a little bit smoother than the last. Although last year's was incredibly smooth. We had very little in the way of contentious issues or problems. The amount of duplicate or replacement ballots we had to mail out was within the range that we deem to be reasonable. But we're always striving to make the mailings count so that people get their ballot. And the biggest thing is we don't want anyone to have the fear that they're not going to get the chance to vote if they're eligible. And we go to great pains to ship out replacement paper if time allows. But up until I'd say an hour before the deadline closes, if someone didn't get their electronic ballot and wants to vote, we can typically make that happen. Remembering, of course, we're all volunteers too, and some of us still work jobs. So we try our best to be very timely in our response. Sometimes there is a bit of a lag.
Excellent. And that is all I have, I think. Is that all you have?
That's all I have. I just want to wish all of the candidates the best of luck. I do want to remind folks to make sure that when they put signs in the yard, they pay attention to the ARC guidelines. I hesitate to say this because it might be controversial, but according to the ARC guidelines, you're only allowed one sign on your lawn, and we have 3 open positions. So I would say it has not been enforced, that limitation before. I would be surprised if it were strictly enforced. But if in doubt, contact the ARC committee and make sure. But in any case, all candidate signs have to be removed within 7 days after the annual meeting.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and good luck in the coming months.
Thank you so much. And like I said, happy voting. Exercise your privilege.
Great. Have a great day.
Thank you.
The Pines Cast is an Ocean Pines Association production. It was written and edited by me, Tony Russo, executive producer, Linda Martin. If you would like to make any suggestions about the show, you can do that by emailing me. My email address is bytonyrusso@gmail.com. That is bytonyrusso@gmail.com. I am always happy to take requests. And as always, please subscribe wherever you're listening now. Just type Pines Cast in your podcatcher and you'll get us. And we will see you next time on the Pines Cast.